its own. We are seriously doomed to reap what we're sowing on our children, and that we should try to avoid as quickly as possible.
Well, Dr. Cooper, before we get to our next question, we also welcome our viewers on SABC News Channel DSTV 404. If you're just joining us, of course, our spotlight is on the safety of our children in public spaces. Of course, you'd recall over the past few days, what South Africans were really shocked about going on social media was the alleged rape of a child at a popular Pretoria pub and a restaurant. Joining us here is, of course, Mr Themba Masango, who's with #NotInYourName, as well as Dr. Saths Cooper in our Durban offices. Mr Masango, I think our next question, of course, will be directed at you. Why do we seem to be, as a society, failing to protect our children? I don't want to say parents, I don't want to say teachers, but as a society in its entirety, why are we failing to protect our children?
And I'm glad you're putting the question that way, that why as a society? It's not parents, it's not school teachers. The old age saying goes that it takes a village to raise a child. And the doctor also alluded to what the president was saying earlier on, is that the country seems not to have recovered from its violent and atrocious past. And the way we take it out on those that really looked up to us as kids is really sickening and terrible. And we should look at the laws of our country, especially coming to pedophiles, rapists, and people who act out so violently against women and children. They can't be getting the average sentences that other criminals are getting. You cannot compare a thief to a person that does such a thing, because this person is killing generations to come. And we should really look at really strengthening our laws and making sure that they get harsh sentences.
Mr Masango, we'll talk about law enforcement and, you know, the sentences that are meted out against those found guilty of perpetrating these violent crimes against our children. Let me come to you, Dr. Cooper. Why is it that we've even reached a point in South Africa and perhaps in other parts of the world where our children are not even safe in public spaces?
Well, look, I don't think we've dealt with the fact that we're a society that's been in transition. We've been in transition now for almost a quarter of a century. We've not acknowledged that. We seem to have moved in May 1994 from a total system of exclusion, repression, and very serious violence to a laissez-faire democracy. And in between, we have not taken care of those ingredients that will make our society safe, that will make democracy safe in our country. First of all, our education system is appalling. Our social services system, if it exists at all in reality, is also shocking. Now, a study done by the University of Cape Town Children's Institute last year reveals that 99% of the children who were investigated have reported either witnessing or being a victim of violence. And one police station referred 10 cases to a particular social services office. And on investigation, that office reported during that period that there were no abuse cases whatsoever, let alone rape, the 10 rape cases that were referred to it, the violent and rape cases that were referred to it. So we are dealing with a lack of caring, a lack of commitment by adult South Africa, people in leadership. And I'm glad that the president has made a key address celebrating Winnie Mandela's birthday today. And also, we need leadership of that caliber who can stand up and be counted, not the pusillanimous, pussy-footed people we have in politics, in education, in social services, in the private sector. We don't have serious leaders like the Mandelas, like those who have passed on for us to rely on. We have Desmond Tutu, who currently is at hospital, but we don't have the persons who can really rise to the occasion, set an example, a moral and sterling example for the rest of us to follow. In the last few years, things have gotten worse because of the scale of sheer lack of caring and corruption, where people have been self-interested. We have been more interested as adults in our own issues than worrying about our children. And our children are visiting that on themselves. School violence has increased. In the East Rand, there was a case of a necklacing just over a month ago. We are returning to the barbarism that we saw during apartheid, because we've learned from apartheid. And our adults are visiting that kind of sheer horror on our children. We need to turn this around, and we need to start in the kindergarten.
I'd just like to bring in Mr.
We need
Masango
to start in the primary school. Above that, I think we're going to forget what we are about, because we need to start right at the beginning with our children, babes in arms, in the creches, in the home, in the schools, and so on. And don't
Dr.
forget,
Cooper, I'm afraid we'll have to take...
We're a society that's under siege from itself. If our police stations have security guards, you can imagine the state we're in. And talking about law and order, we have police and security working an inhuman 2 shifts per day, 12 hours. Who can work and pay attention?
We'll get to law enforcement. I'm not sure if
security is so
Dr.
important.
Cooper can hear me in our Durban studios.
Police, our security officials, our correctional services officials work 2 shifts per day, and they're not at their best. So we're placing a further burden on them. We need to revisit how we're doing things in South Africa. If we want to be a successful country, we need to start looking seriously at our policies, our practices, and begin with changing our attitudes in the school to children.
All right, Dr. Cooper, quite a mouthful there. Are we not looking after our children? Isn't there much emphasis that we're putting on the safety of our children? Let's take a short break here. Our discussion will continue straight after this.
The Cape Flats is under siege by the gangsters, by the drug dealers.
The community here say at this point in time they have had enough.
The end of the day, what is happening? The police do nothing. The doctors get lost. We are sick and tired of this.
We want the government to take note of us.
Talk to us about this MPs.
It's a national call for black people to come and have a conversation about the black condition. We have realized that after all that suffering, black people are still going through economic frustration. We also believe that heritage should be there to bring black and white together. We're not against the idea of rainbowism.
Township under siege, roads blockaded, and the atmosphere here remains tense. Residents want their houses damaged by the storms repaired.
Raids are coming. Who's going to repair my furniture?
Police remain vigilant.
We may never have sufficient members, but the members that we have, we are comfortable with them. We are in a position to deal with the situation.
From us also as councillors, we lack information as it's not cascaded to us.
We are losing the best of kids. People that are fathers or pastors that comes from a church.
No taxi, nothing. We were not notified. I get to town, there's nothing. I get
Well, welcome back. Our focus tonight is on the safety of our children. Now, children seem to experience violence everywhere, even at home. And according to a 2018 Department of Science and Technology study that we previously mentioned, 66% of South African parents report beating their children between the ages of 4 and 5. Mr. Masango, what does this tell us about parenting?
Well, I guess that is a double-edged question, because there is the saying that obviously folly is bound in a child's heart and the rod of correction drives it away.
Yeah.
However, I think that the violence that we are now seeing today is not necessarily the one of teaching and correcting children. This is actually an outburst of anger and of frustration. This goes back to society. This goes back to socio-economic issues. This goes back to our country having a clear leadership void, where there is no leadership that inspires hope and forward going in people. Our economy is in tatters, and this has a stress and a real outlet for parents is then on children. So the disciplining of children is all well and good, but when a parent disciplines a child out of anger and frustration and takes out their own violent nature upon the child, which is caused by obviously a lot of other factors I mentioned, and it is killing our society. It is really...
I want to bring in Dr. Cooper there, Mr. Masango, as well. I'm hoping you can hear me now, Dr. Cooper. You know, over the past couple of months, at least over the past couple of years, if I can, we've seen children themselves acting out. We've seen quite a number of these social media posts, the videos going viral of children in the classroom, on the streets, also becoming perpetrators of violence themselves. What does this say about perhaps how we're raising our children and some of the issues that are plaguing children in society today?
Well, the research, the literature, and common sense tells us that we learn, we see, we hear, and what is done to us, our socialization, is reflected in how we behave. Now, we've been socialized into a culture of violence, pre-democracy. That culture of violence hasn't receded. Indeed, in this city, in this province, there are political assassinations that have become almost normative, and we're going into election mode. So our children are learning this behavior because the parents who are reported, 2/3 of those parents who report beating their children don't know any better, because we haven't been brought up in a different way of dealing with ourselves, dealing with children who may misbehave. We don't need to beat children and really butcher them in the way that we do to make them see sense. We can do it by showing better examples ourselves. And that example needs to be shown by each parent, each teacher, each social worker, our leaders. And you know that last year we had a deputy minister who was found guilty of really beating on a few hapless females. Now, that kind of example should not ever be tolerated in our society. One stroke and you're out. Not give persons more chances. That kind of turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to violent people is reflected when our children pick this up. Because what we do to the people who are violent, who are abusers in our society, and we turn a blind eye and a deaf ear, our criminal prosecution system.
Yes.
1/5 of those reported 41,000 cases
Cooper,
over the last three financial years.
Yes, we'll talk about law enforcement very shortly, but I think one of those examples where we saw children really acting out, of course, is the recent, of course, a teenager stabbing a teacher to death. One of those incidents that really sent shockwaves through South Africa. Let's take a short break. We'll continue this discussion straight after this.
Need to know more about the markets? This is where it all starts, at the SABC's headquarters in Auckland Park in Johannesburg, South Africa. We analyze, report, crunch the numbers, call in the experts, package the news, and bring you critical global market updates from the JSE.
The continent's leaders in liquid market movement and the fastest growing secondary listings made right here.
Small businesses, the backbone of the economy. With South Africa's very high unemployment rate, it's said that 90% of new jobs could come from this sector.
Every weekday afternoon on DSTV, channel 404.
We were saying similarly here, in a process which is intended to be impartial and independent, he should similarly recuse himself.
One can build conspiracies, and the fewer facts you have, the more easy it is to build conspiracies. And I suggest to you that when suggesting that there is some conspiracy about the witnesses were called, you might not have been aware of the facts that I've outlined to you.
Zimbabwe belongs to all Zimbabweans from all the four corners of Zimbabwe.
What a time! 1:54.26, another meeting record. She made it look effortless. Once again, Caster Semenya, no pacemaker required.
Well, welcome back to our special program here, discussing exactly how safe our children are in public spaces in South Africa. Now we'll take a look at law enforcement. I think let me start with you, Mr. Masango. Are we doing enough in terms of the law, for example, to protect our children?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
We've got good laws, we've got excellent constitution, but we don't implement, we don't follow through. We should make sure that we implement, we follow through on the laws. Harsher sentencing needs to be administered to pedophiles, rapists. These people have clearly shown that they do not belong in society. They don't want to be part of society. Yeah. So we should have stringent laws to them. We cannot treat them with rubber gloves, because a nation that cannot take care of its children is a nation that does not have a future at all. So we need to make sure that our kids are a priority, and don't take lightly what children say to you.
Yeah.
Parents, schools, any environment, if a child comes home complaining about a certain issue, we need to be open, hearing it, investigated, rather be wrong and mistaken, but don't take what children say lightly, because this is definitely our future. Yeah. And I believe that our lawmakers, parliamentarians, judges, whoever they are, they should look at these laws and make sure that we get stricter laws. These people should be locked away, keys thrown away.
Dr. Cooper, should the existing laws be re-looked at?
No, I don't think that our laws should be re-looked. I think that what we should be doing is implement those laws. So the law enforcement agencies need to be more serious about this. I think it was Minister Sisulu in the mid-90s who was very strong on specialized children's violence and rape and abuse cases. And I think what we need to do is separate violent cases, all violent criminals, in special courts, have special sessions just dealing with violence that's not confused with common theft and stuff like that. And then it'll become more serious, and perhaps the 1/5 conviction rate for rape against children and 1/3 conviction rate for murder of our children will improve. Remember also that we have tens of thousands of newly born babies that are abandoned each year in our country, 2/3 of whom are reported to die. Now, all of this says we've just got a serious problem throughout society. It's a complex issue. We need leadership to come together on this and not just look at it from a law enforcement perspective. We need to look at it from a socioeconomic, educational perspective as well. We need to be retrained in how we deal with the vulnerable, with our children in our midst, because that underpins our own claim to being human.
All right, Dr. Saths Cooper joining us from our Durban studios there, wanting more implementation regarding laws pertaining to children and, of course, how law enforcement deals with those found guilty of perpetrating violence against children. Also joining us, thank you very much for your time as well, Mr. Themba Masango, who is with #NotInMyName. They're also always out on the streets dealing with several injustices in South Africa. Thank you. On Tuesday as well, they'll be outside, we understand, the court where the man who allegedly raped the little minor at that popular restaurant in Pretoria, he'll be appearing in court there. They're vowed to be outside. But you've missed this discussion. You can also check on it on our YouTube page on SABC News Online, and you could certainly probably have your input relating to exactly how safe our children are in public spaces in South Africa. But thank you very much for joining us. In the next few moments, I'll bring you the news at 9.